Hey everybody, it's Jochen Heiden and I'm back with another tutorial for War in Spain. Today we're going to be talking about the advanced preferences screen because there's a lot of stuff on there that's kind of new to this type of game that I've never seen before that we should probably discuss. So to get to it, you can either do it from the main screen or in-game. You'll click at the preferences button here, and then you're going to click advanced preferences here. All right, and I'm going to do my best to explain what all this stuff is in my own words. But I will be referencing the manual. You'll see it on the right hand side as we go. Okay, I'm also going to zoom in here because some people have been saying that my videos are hard to watch on mobile, which I get because I'm 4K. But let's go through it. So we're going to go from the top to the very bottom. Show borders, opaque, off, or transparent. These are the borders that are existing with the nations in the game currently. I like to have it opaque so I can clearly see where they are. If you want transparent, it would look kind of like barely visible. And if you turn it off, you wouldn't be able to see it at all. So I like those opaque. 2x pop-up size. Now this will be very helpful to a lot of you guys. The default size is 2. That's what's giving you these ginormous like pop-up boxes with like information like the combat report and all that. I like to use 1. You can even go down to 0, but then it gets a little bit harder to read. I think 1 is a really nice size for most people's monitors. Air sidebar, that's going to be on the right hand side. When you click on a base that has aircraft, this will be how many squadrons can be displayed at one time. Ops losses percentage. Okay, so this is for those of you who want to change how many ops losses your aircraft take during routine operations. You may be familiar with this from War in the Pacific. You know, you lose aircraft that are damaged, they don't make it home. Transferring from one base to the other because the pilots suck or their airfield's damaged. This controls how many ops losses you take. 100 is normal engine calculated ops losses, okay? If you put it to 0, you take no ops losses. If you put it to 200, you take double the amount of ops losses you normally would. I would leave it at 100, that's standard. Okay, coming over to this stuff here, we're going to go from flak to ground accuracy. If you want to change the accuracy of the flak, naval bombing, naval torpedo, or ground bombing with aircraft, you would change this number. 1000 is normal calculated accuracy. 0 would be they can't hit literally anything. And 2000 would be double their normal accuracy. So I know it says 2000. It may have been better to do 200, but this also gives you some more granularity if you want to really dial it in. I recommend 1000, which is normal for all of these settings. Okay, R&D style. Oh, don't do that. Okay, R&D style. So for scenarios that could take advantage of it, there is research and development, which works similar in principle to what like War in the Pacific might have if you're familiar with that. If you want to just use whatever the scenario has calculated and don't want to be able to manually adjust it, leave this on fixed. If you want to go to custom, this gives you the ability to take over the research and development for those scenarios that can accommodate it. I would recommend leaving it on fixed for now until you learn the game better. Unit withdrawal on. This is for units that have a scheduled withdrawal date. If you leave this on, they will leave when they're supposed to leave. If you turn it off, they will never leave the map. I like to leave it on so that you have a little bit of historical accuracy. With the scenario where if a unit's supposed to leave when they're supposed to leave, let them go. Amphibious landing. Okay, let me try to explain this to you as best I can. Okay. So, amphibious landing. There's a standard. When you have it on standard, the landings are very simplified, okay? All transport ships are assumed to carry barges to help offload troops if you're going to do an amphibious landing. If you set this to detailed, then the amphibious rules change, okay? Then you need to have landing barges in the pool of the nations that are conducting the assault. Now, and there's also some thing where nations that have a relationship of 90 or higher will share their barges. And basically, these barges are loaded on the ships, and it changes the type of units that can be offloaded if you have enough. It's pretty complicated. I leave it on detailed, but I'm not entirely sure I fully understand how this works. You can see the manual on the right. Read it for yourself and decide if this is something you want to get into. I'm going to leave it on detail because I really want to dive full into this game and take advantage of this engine. But if you don't want to deal with all that right now, put it to standard and don't worry about it. Okay. I'm not entirely sure how many amphibious landings you're going to be doing unless you're dealing with like scenario 7, landing up Palma de Mallorca or something. Okay, let's move on. Form LCU. This allows you to create any custom LCU during the game. So if you want to build your own unit, you can do so. I would leave this on because I want to have that option. If you don't want to deal with that, turn it off. Form groups on. Okay, this is for the creation of a custom air group during the game. If you want to be able to make those, leave it on. If you don't, turn it off. Build ships. Okay, this allows for the construction of new ships for nations with a full economy. The construction cost depends on national economy and settings in the field for input of the shipyard industries. I think this is going to be scenario dependent if the scenario you're playing has the ability to even do this. I leave it on, although I haven't really dug into the scenarios to see which ones can actually take advantage of this. Player-defined upgrades. So this is something from War in the Pacific you might be familiar with. PDU on means that you decide when a unit upgrades or doesn't. You decide when an aircraft squadron upgrades or doesn't. If you turn it on, you can take manual control of when units and devices get upgraded. If you turn it off, then they're going to upgrade when the scenario says they should. I like to have a little more control over this, so I leave it on. Replacement mode. Okay, this is kind of complicated as fast as I can. So there's 3 types of replacement models, right? You have pool, supply, and device ship. So let me try to explain this as best I can. In pool mode, this is like an abstract production from the industry is used to create the device, and then they're sent to units that need them. For example, if you lost an infantry squad and that unit is set to replace those, the underlying industry in the background will use its available points to create that device, and then it will be sent to the unit when it creates it. I tend to want to play like this because this is what I understand the most from War in the Pacific. That's my interpretation. Now, I'm sorry, I'm talking about replace mode. If you have it on supply, it's a little more simple. So, supply means the player does not have to do more than ensure the bases are in good supply. Right? The supply is meant to teleport units directly to the unit if you have the supply to make them. I think that's a little more gamey. It's simple, but gamey. So this would be the easiest way. And then device ship. This is the detailed system using reserve units, which must be created on the map to fill air and ground units. Now, this is probably the most complicated one. I think I may actually want to play like this, now that I'm thinking about it. So basically, you have to create a reserve unit, and then you send it up to wherever the LCU or air group is that needs replacements, and then you fly it or ship it there, or march it there, and then you merge it into that unit to fill in its replacements. This would be the most historically accurate way to do it, right? Because if a unit's in the field and they lose 100 troops, they don't just magically just poof show up next day. They got to come from a base. They've got to be shipped in, recruited, trained, and then they got to march up to that unit and rejoin it that way. This would be the way to simulate that. Okay, I think I'm going to play this way now that I'm reading about it. So, easiest, middle, most complicated. That's how I interpret this. Production. All right, there's 2 production models. They are from pool, which is the simple way where the armament factories produce points which are spent to create devices for LCUs for unit replacement. Okay, and then from factories is a detailed model where the factories on the map create the specific devices. I think this again is going to be scenario dependent. This would ideally be the most complicated way to do it and the most realistic. But again, you would have to understand the scenario you're playing to know if they have the factories on the map to even do this. And I don't even know if this is implemented fully in a game as yet. So I'm going to keep it from pool. We can dig into this more later. Let's continue on. VT Fuse tech level. So VT fuses are something that I don't even think are applicable to this actual campaign, because VT fuses don't even come in until 1943, and the Allies have them. I don't know if the Germans or anybody else does. I believe this is future-proofing the engine for other games that will be able to take advantage of this. I would leave this exactly where it's at and don't touch it, because no one has VT fuses in this campaign. Ship damage 1000. Okay. So just like over here, 1000 would be normal, 0 would be no damage, and 2000 would be 200% of normal damage during combat. So leave it at 1000. I wouldn't touch it. AK tankers. So AKs are cargo ships. If you want them to be able to load like oil or other kinds of liquids, you can turn this on. I believe this is not super realistic though, because if you have a cargo ship that has a dry hold, how are you going to pour oil into that? It's not made for that. This is something that if you just want to simplify stuff, leave this on. But be advised, if you do use AK tankers on, the unload rate is much slower than a ship that's designed for liquids, like a tanker, a legit tanker. I'm going to turn this off because it's just not realistic to put heavy bunker fuel oil into an AK. What are you going to put it in the drums and load it? Probably not. I'm going to leave this off, but that's up to you. Okay, all this stuff here, sight, all this Delta stuff is pertaining to ship combat. Now, I don't know enough about the system yet to want to mess with this. These are the default values, which I recommend you leave as well. But if you look at the manual on the right, it tells you about naval crew max error percent in determining range of target, speed of target, all that stuff. Increasing this number would probably make them less accurate and make shooting worse. Decreasing this number probably makes them shoot better. That's my interpretation. What I recommend to you is leave all this as is. There's no need to mess with it right now until you understand the game better and I understand the game better. I haven't even seen a lot of naval combat to know how these will affect it, so I'm not touching it. But that's what they do. They change the accuracy essentially, or the how much delta or change the units, the ships can have when they're shooting their guns. Combat groups. There's two options here. And this kind of differs from the manual a little bit. I think this may have been a change later after the manual. Let me do my best to explain this. Combat groups, a historical means if, let's say you have a division that has 3 brigades assigned to it, and you want to rebuild those brigades to form the division, the scenario is going to have to be coded that way to allow you to do that. So if you want to make that division, you have to have the 3 assigned brigades, for example, to make that division form into the division. Ad hoc allows you, with caveats, and I'm sure it sounds like the engine has things in place to prevent gamey setups, allows you to form certain units together to make a bigger unit within reason. So if you have a bunch of little battalions that aren't really in the same command structure, but you want to form them in to make a regiment, for example, you can do that with the combat group set to ad hoc. I think I want to play this way to have a little more flexibility in the way that I play the game. But again, the engine won't let you make crazy things like gigantic armored divisions or make an anti-aircraft unit into armored. You know what I'm saying? It won't let you do that. So I would not. I think you're fine playing ad hoc, but if you just want it to be what the scenario allows you to do only, leave it at historical. LCU takes replacements. So this is like a static starting setup. If you want to control when your land combat units take replacements manually, set this to off. So every unit on the map when you start the campaign will default to off, and you have to decide what units take replacements. I recommend doing this so that you can control where your finite amount of resources are going for each unit and not just being spread across the map. For example, bring in replacements at units that are nowhere near the front lines and robbing them from those that need them the most. You control it by turning this off. Air group replacement, exact same thing. Okay? Logistics model. All right, this is a big one. Okay. So off provides you with a simple model, which is for players who just want to focus on combat. And that's fine. If you just want to get in and start attacking and having battles, leave this off and you don't have to worry about getting supply, resources, all that stuff moved around. But if you're playing this game, guys, you bought it and you're playing it because you want to take advantage of the complexities of real ground combat, and you want to, you know, wring out everything you can out of this game engine, I would recommend playing with this on, but that makes things a lot more complicated for you. Okay, this will enable the detailed logistics model, which this engine really excels at. I recommend you do it, but we'll have to make some other videos on exactly how that works, because logistics in this game are 100,000 times more complicated than they are in War in the Pacific if you're used to that game. In War in the Pacific, a lot of the logistics is automated for you, right? Supply just magically moves where it's supposed to go, and that's done under the hood. And you don't really get to control it without a few minor variations. With logistics model on, you're going to have to find a way to get your stuff moved to the front lines. You're going to have to manage the trucks, the trains, the horses, all that stuff to get the stuff moved where you want it to go. Play like this, but you're going to have to learn how to do it, and we'll do that together later on. Okay, getting close to the end here, guys. Okay. Ground combat loss model. Okay. Just like these, 1,000 means normal. So during a ground combat, if you want your units to take double the damage, you put this to 2,000. If you want them to take no damage, you put 0. I don't know why you would do that. Recommend you leave it here. Ground combat, adjusted AV modifies the chance to take control of a hex in ground combat. So if you want to leave it to what the engine normally calculates straight up, leave it at 1,000. If you want to make it harder to take a unit, take a hex, you put this at 0. And if you want to make it like twice as easy to take a hex, you put this at 1,000. Again, I wouldn't mess with this. I would leave it at 1,000. LCU supply eat. Okay, this is kind of complicated. This is the number of days it takes for any kind of LCU to consume the basic number of supplies. The basic amount of supply is 1 per 5 men every X number of days, where X is the number that can be set here. So if you have 100 men in your LCU, you divide that by 5. That means they would eat 20 supply. Okay. Now, how many days does it take them to eat 1 supply? That's the number here. So in 30 days, that LCU with 100 men would eat 20 supply. If you're following the math here. Okay, if you want to change this to, so the higher the number here, the lower the supply consumption per land combat unit. The lower the number, the more supply they eat. I recommend leaving it at 30 because I think that would be what I understand from War in the Pacific. It's based on a 30-day model. I would leave this alone. Okay, LCU supply deviation. It's a factor to determine an LCU's ability to carry supplies, ammo, and fuel. 1 is the normal amount, 2 is twice the amount, and 3 is triple the amount, and so on. So this is how much supply the unit can carry with it in combat, or when it's moving around the map. I would leave this at 1. Okay, this next one, AF Ops PT cost, sets how much supply, ammo, and aviation fuel must be present to recover 1 point of airfield operations points. All right. So if it's set to 0, for example, there will not be any restricting effect on airfield readiness. I would leave this exactly where it's at. I don't really understand it. Just leave that at 10. AC capture. I like this. If this is set to on, if you take an airfield with aircraft on it, you can capture the aircraft and use them for yourself. If this is set to off, they just get destroyed when you take it. This is something new if you're a War in the Pacific player. If you capture an enemy base and there's aircraft that are broke on the ground, they get destroyed and you get to count it as aircraft killed. In this game, if you want to be able to capture them, you set this to on. I think that's fun. I think it'd be cool to capture enemy aircraft and use them for your own squadrons. So I'm going to leave that on. Commander Scuttle. This is allowing the commander to decide if a ship is so damaged that it needs to be scuttled. I like this because a lot of times your ship captain will make the final decision on whether or not a ship can be saved or sunk. If you leave it off, the ship captain can't make that decision, but I think that's less realistic. A to A resilience on. The higher the value, the lower the chance for critical hits. 5 is a default setting. 10 would be half the chance. So that's what the manual says. I'll have to get with the designers to find out what exactly this means, because on and off is not what the manual says. It has a number in there. So we'll circle back to this in the future, or I might actually pin a comment to find out what exactly this is supposed to mean, because it doesn't match the manual. We'll come back to that. A2A lethality. Okay. Defines the amount of extra damage an aircraft takes in air-to-air combat. 0 is the standard amount. 1 would be double. 2 would be triple, and so on. I would leave this at 0. Air-to-air breakthrough. Okay, this modifies the chance for Cap to attack bombers in case Cap breaks through the escorting fighters. 0 is the default chance. 1 would be double. 2 would be triple. I would leave this at 0. Artillery damage. Just like these other ones that have 1000s, this is normal artillery damage. 2000 would be double. 0 would be 0. I would not mess with this. Leave it alone for now. Artillery ammo fire consumption. Okay, so 120 is normal. So whatever the normal amount of supply consumption that the artillery would use would be 120. If you want to make that half as much, you would set it to 60. If you want to double the amount of supply that the ammunition or supply that artillery uses in combat, you would put it at 240. I would leave it at 120. Leave it alone. Artillery lethality. Okay. This modifies the damage done by indirect fire. 0 is no damage. 1000 is default. 2000 would be double. Leave this at 1000. There's no need to mess with it. And the last thing here, guys, this was a long video, but we got to it. Task Force AAA display. Rate of fire based. Okay, there's three ways to display a Task Force's AA rating. Rate of fire, which shows information of the ship's anti-aircraft power as firepower that will be adjusted by the gun's rate of fire. Effect information window will show a ship's anti-air power as a weapon's effect for the devices, and barrels is the amount of guns that they have. I'm just leaving it at rate of fire based. I don't really understand this enough to mess with it. I don't think you need to mess with this. Rate of fire base is probably good enough. Whew. Guys, we got through it. This was a long video, but there's a lot of options here. Hopefully I shed some light on this for you. I would suggest that 75% of these things don't need to be changed. Some of this stuff over here is good. A little bit of this stuff in here is good, but most of the stuff that has thousands you can leave alone. If you have any questions on this, please leave a comment or come over to my Discord, and I'm going to find out about this air-to-air resilience and probably put a caveat at the end of the video. Alright guys, I got some clarification on the air-to-air resiliency. So, per Alessandro, the guy that wrote the bulk of the code for the game, this is incorrect, and what it should be is a sliding scale from 0 to 127. Oh man. So essentially how it works is that, for the time being, assume that on equals 5. 5 would be 100% normal resiliency. Increasing the number makes the resiliency less, and decreasing the number would make resiliency lower. So you can see on the right hand side here, this is the conversation I was having with Alessandro, and this guy is so German, man. Like, only a German would come up with this crazy math. For us mere mortals, I don't get it. So for now, this is going to be edited or modified in a future update of the game to incorporate what he's saying here. Leave it on and don't touch it, right? And then hopefully on the next patch notes, they'll have additional explanation and maybe a manual update to better explain this. But for now, don't touch it. It's going to be this. All right, that's it. This is a long video, but I appreciate your patience. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.